sponsored by the Sunday Dinner Realty Partners, who gives back 10% of their commission to nonprofits of their clients' choosing. Today we have Aaron Sorrells with us with the Unemployed Alcoholic. So he's here today to tell us exactly what is an unemployed alcoholic.
That's a great What is the unemployed alcoholic?
Well, there is a big difference. I actually, a lot of times people will wonder how I became the unemployed alcoholic, and it was pretty easy.
We joked about that before.
We did, yeah. It was pretty easy. I was unemployed. I was battling alcoholism, and then I started doing comedy, and just like that, I went from being an unemployed alcoholic to the unemployed alcoholic. And to tell you the truth, this job is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get to help people laugh while highlighting recovery and faith, which are two things that are really important to me. And I'm skipping over a couple steps there, like 12 of them to be exact. Recovery has been a big part of my story, and I'm now 3 years sober from alcohol.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been an exciting journey. It's been a journey of self-discovery and a journey of finding purpose. About a little better than 3 years ago, alcohol had gotten to the point in my life where it had gotten very uncomfortable, and I was going to lose all the things that were important to me if I didn't figure something out. I also knew from a repeating pattern, that I wasn't able to break that cycle on my own. So I ended up leaving a job, throwing myself into a great church and a wonderful recovery program, and started rebuilding the relationship with myself, with my wife, and with God. And I thought that might take a couple weeks, and then I'd get back to work. But that is not how that works.
Quick fix.
Right. Yeah. A couple of weeks of unemployment turned to a couple months, then 3 months, 6 months, and at 12 months, I'm still unemployed, and every door that I had knocked on had closed. I was looking at entry-level stuff through executive-level stuff, and just could not get anything to stick. And that was a painful time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Extremely painful.
Yeah. But it was also a time of growth. It was a time of some really neat things happening, some self-discovery, some rediscovering who I was, who my identity is, and it was good. And one day, my wife and I were walking around downtown Grand Rapids, and in the middle of kind of a dark time, we were just laughing together. And it really struck me the power of laughter. That same day, I decided that I was going to try to get a spot with Laugh Fest and try my hand at doing comedy, try my hand at sharing that laughter with other people. And it was the last day to apply, so I wasn't able to think about it.
Wow.
So I applied. I got the spot. I got a wonderful spot at Dr. Grin's, which is the biggest comedy club.
That's awesome. So had you done comedy before?
Right, that's my question.
I had not. That was my first time.
Like,
yeah.
So you just really were like, I'm funny, maybe I should.
No, this is just crazy. This is literally like, because you went probably as far deep in the dumps as you ever have gone, and if you hadn't have done that, this totally wouldn't happen.
Well, there's no way that I could have convinced myself, or especially my wife, that I'm going to leave my job and become a comedian. It took
You're
that
not very
trial.
funny.
Yeah, that's not funny.
Yeah, I can't imagine like walking out of my office. I have a home office, so walking out and going, done.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do now? I'm gonna tell jokes.
Yeah, not even like an improv. Like I'd have to go to like some dive bar or like across town and be like, okay,
I'm gonna try this.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Well, and that's
awesome.
oftentimes how
Yeah.
things happen, though. Our strongest and best achievements can often come from our trials.
Yeah.
And this really is. I mean, the comedy is a piece of it. But I help people laugh while highlighting recovery and faith. And highlighting recovery, there is an incredible stigma around people in recovery. Because of the anonymity, because it's anonymous, a lot of times the quote-unquote normal people that are walking around in life who might be in recovery, people don't know that. So people have no picture that you can be in recovery and live a normal life.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, other than on TV.
Yeah.
Being anonymous is wonderful, and like AA programs, that is an incredibly important component of those programs, and I would never say anything against that. But a side effect of that is that a lot of people don't recognize that you can be in recovery and be a relatively normal person. It's actually not what separates us. It's kind of what brings us together is our struggles, So being public about being in recovery and highlighting recovery, that's been a very important
Well,
piece
you're really
of it.
opening up the door in a non-intrusive way to have other people talk about this. Like, it's got to be so enlightening to see somebody and be able to resonate with somebody who's up there laughing and not minimizing the recovery process, but finding joy and laughter in such a trying time. I'm sure you have people in your audience that are like, that guy, that's me. This is part of my story. And then you can plant that seed and go. That has to be powerful just for the piece of the conversation. Because you stomp out stigma by talking about it.
Yeah,
The
or
more
are
it's talked
affected
about,
by
the
a
more
family
it's-
member with that stigma. A lot of people are embarrassed to say, oh, you hear like that, oh, my dad was a deadbeat alcoholic. That's not always the case. Some people are functioning alcoholics that, behind closed doors, things are different than, and people are ashamed, and they grew up with, a family member like that, or somebody who was supposed to be, you know what I'm trying to say. Just any way to open the conversation is an amazing thing.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that are hurting that don't let on that they're hurting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was one of them. I mean, there's a lot of people that would have looked at my life 10 years ago and said, wow, everything's together, everything's happening, everything's going well.
Shiny happy on the outside,
Yeah.
right?
It's, especially in the Christian culture, there is a lot of shiny happiness that's projected, and there is also a lot of pain that is covered up. But there's also hope, and there's also just wonderful things, and because we're struggling with something, it doesn't mean that that's the end of our story. In fact, oftentimes it's just the beginning.
Yeah, it doesn't define you.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing as the unemployed alcoholic, but what that actually looks like on a daily basis. I perform in a lot of bars. Actually, I probably spend more time in the bars now than I did when I was drinking. And that's okay. It's interesting to come into some environments that are certainly not recovery environments. And be open about the fact that I'm in recovery and that I'm a man of faith. Now, I don't walk around knocking drinks out of people's hands or hitting them over the head with the Bible.
Right.
It's
fire and brimstone.
right.
Father Aaron, like in the school.
Right. Yeah, I'm unapologetic about who I am and what I believe. But I'm also non-judgmental about where people are. One of the things that I know is my faith in who I am is a direct result of things that I've experienced and circumstances throughout my life. And every single person is in that same situation. Every single person has very, very real reasons for what they do, what they believe, and who they are. And it's disrespectful to come in and talk down to anybody, or to feel that because I'm a man of my particular faith that I'm above them. Again, that's not saying that I don't wholeheartedly believe that this is true, that my faith, especially my relationship with Jesus, I feel like that is the most important and true thing about me. But just because I believe that, it doesn't mean that people that don't believe that are any less than I am. So.
Yeah, I've always felt like it's the people who preach who generally turn people away, and it's the people who live their life as not like perfect. Nobody's perfect, but like you're saying, like I believe in God. I'm not going to judge people. Like all these basic principles of treating people the way God would or Jesus would is a better way to spread
The word.
and
Yeah, and also boy, this has took a little bit of a different turn, but I think it's good. I think this is great conversation, you know. And
but it's being humble too.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Is being humble.
Yeah, and with that, being humble, being non-judgmental, I think that leads to genuine relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think that oftentimes, as a Christian, it can be tempting to kind of be metrics focused or results oriented. Like, boy, we need to get out. Exactly. And people can sniff that out. If you are trying to build a relationship with somebody for any purpose other than having genuine relationship with them, it's disrespectful and it's detrimental.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Is this you shouldn't have brought a soapbox for me to stand.
I'll knock you down.
So
Maybe 5 of them will be on the same playing field.
You do the comedy, which obviously brings awareness and stamps out stigma, which is kind of our thing. What else do you do? I mean, do people come to you because of that? Do they,
Yeah, I feel led to support people through the recovery process, and there's a couple ways that I do that. Actually, in the Monroe North neighborhood of Grand Rapids, we're launching a new recovery community. It's a joint effort between Crossroads Bible Church and Monroe Community Church. And right now on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. we're meeting at Monroe Community Church and just kind of planting the seeds to build this recovery community. And it'll be a support community. I also have many relationships with people that are going through recovery or going through life, and I'll meet for lunches or coffees and just talk with people, and I really feel led and called to support people through whatever their journey is. Another thing that has been so important to me through my journey is encouragement. You know, it's amazing how somebody just saying a little word of encouragement has made all the difference in some days. It's made the difference in some days of staying on the wagon or falling off. You know, it's of incredible importance. So I've started sending out to some friends through social media and through an email list a little bit of encouragement every day. I've got 30-second videos that I record every day and just send them out just to be just to give somebody a little word of encouragement, because I just know that can mean a lot.
Yeah, and you never know. You never know when you could need it.
Yeah.
Strike it anytime.
Yeah. So that's some of the things that I do. I also speak. I have had the opportunity to go into some different places, some business oriented, because there's a lot of lessons from the road of recovery that maybe people can learn by not going through the road of recovery. There's some less painful ways. Exactly. Yeah. There's some lower cost ways.
I just hear and like, stop.
Yeah. So some speaking again. The comedy, that's kind of like the door opener, because laughter is so important. Laughter can bring a diverse group of people together.
It's the universal language.
It is the universal language. Yes, it's great. That's a really good way to put it. And laughter, what happens, like the physiological process in a comedy show, if you will, a comedian will build tension, and then through a punchline and laughter, release that tension.
Yeah.
So
I never even thought about it like that.
Yeah.
It's like
and you learned all these things after you became a comedian, right? You didn't know what you were doing.
It's funny, when I signed up before I could think about doing comedy, and I'm like, okay, I'm all in. I better write some comedy. So I wrote a little 5-minute bit, and I performed it to a one-person audience of my wife, which that's not a good idea to begin with. But I kind of got through my thing and was all ready, and she went, that's not very good. Which I'm so thankful she did that, because then I nerded out and I started digging into podcasts, which there's a lot of wonderful resources out there. A story for another time, but there's a guy named Rick Roberts who's got a podcast called The School of Laughs, and it's amazing the way that our journeys have intertwined. and it's incredible. He taught me how to do comedy through his podcast. I guess it's a story for this time now. But his podcast was the number one resource that I turned to learn how to do comedy. And I didn't know him or anything. And then at my first time doing comedy, he showed up wearing a name tag that said Rick Roberts. I wouldn't have recognized him.
Yeah.
But he showed up and walked right up to me, and I said, wait, what?
Oh my gosh, that's so
You've been
crazy.
teaching me how to do comedy. And we sat together. He gave me some words of encouragement before I went up. This was my first time doing comedy.
Oh my gosh,
we did not know each other.
Like, hey,
So he didn't know that you.
He had no idea who
Oh,
I
that's
was. This was
I thought you were,
completely
comedy.
random.
Oh my gosh.
No,
okay.
he lives in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's wacky.
He was
That is
in
crazy.
Grand
That's
Rapids.
like divine interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I've referred to it as a turtle on a fence post. If you're walking through a field and you see a turtle on a fence post,
Somebody put that
somebody
turtle
put
there.
that turtle there. Exactly. Yeah. It.
Took me a minute, man.
Yeah. So that's good. And actually, that was that first time doing comedy was through Laugh Fest, which Laugh Fest. We are so fortunate in Grand Rapids to have this
It is great.
this festival, a 10-day festival
Yeah.
celebrating laughter. Their tagline is seriously funny because they're seriously funny from the funny perspective, but they're also serious. Gilda's Club
Yes.
is big on supporting people through battles with cancer and also through grief.
Yeah.
And they just do some wonderful things. And Laugh Fest is something they put on to raise awareness and raise funds. So last year, I worked with Laugh Fest to then start a new thing. We're doing a recovery showcase. And this year we're doing it again. And
Nice.
That's so cool.
it really is cool. And what this is for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody can come and
Yep, so
enjoy
family
this.
friendly.
I would everybody except kids. It's
18 and up.
it's a clean show, but it's a clean adult show.
Okay.
So all my kids are now grown and out of the house, so I forget that kids exist.
What are those things?
So it's I mean, we're not going to be checking IDs at the door, but it's oriented towards an adult audience.
Okay.
But it is clean comedy.
Okay.
So
Which is hard to find.
Yeah.
Clean comedy is hard to find.
Yeah.
it is. In fact, when I've told people that I was doing comedy, the number one thing that people say, other than, wait, what's the unemployed alcoholic? People will say, man, I love comedy, but you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. And sometimes it can truly tick me off. And I know, and then that's what they're going for. Maybe that's that suspense and then release. But sometimes there's no release. You're like, that was just uncalled for. And which I feel like a lot of comedians, they strive on, or that's what they thrive off of.
Well, kind of what we were talking about with comedy, how you build tension and then release it with the laughter. One of the easiest ways to do that is by pushing people out of their comfort zone with topics or language. So that's why the majority of it
It makes sense. As soon as you said that, the light bulb went off. I was like,
Yeah. But, there's great comedians that can be both clean and blue. Blue is what they call comedy. That's the politically correct term that for dirty or bad comedy, it's blue comedy.
interesting.
Yeah, so
what is clean? Is it red then?
It's just clean.
Transparent.
Clean?
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah. So okay, let me talk though about this Laugh Fest Recovery Showcase, because I don't know if all three of you know this, but the Sunday Dinner Realty Group is actually underwriting this show. So it's actually because of you all that we're going to be able to have this show. So thank you very much for being a part of that. But the Clean Comedy Time, the Laugh Fest Recovery Showcase, it's going to happen on March 11th. At Monroe Community Church at 6:30 p.m. And everybody's welcome. All of the comics that are involved are going to be people that have experienced recovery.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's not going to be a recovery meeting by any means. People aren't going to necessarily be.
Does everybody come in wearing masks?
Right.
What are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah. It's a comedy show, but one of the wonderful things about this comedy show is anybody can come in and experience the normalcy or lack thereof of people that are in recovery, you know. So we're going to be up there. We're going to be laughing. Again, we did it last year for the first time ever, and it was a wonderful experience. We've got some of the same comics returning because they crushed it so hard last year.
Yeah.
Are
And
they
then,
local? Local?
actually spread out. There are a couple local people. There's some other people from like Detroit, Traverse City. We've got Chicago represented. We've got somebody coming up from Ohio.
Wow.
So it's
That's great.
yeah, it's going to be a good mix. There'll be 7 of us comics total. That's a long enough amount of time we'll each have to actually get into our stuff and engage with people. But it's a short enough time that if you don't like one of them, there's another one coming right up. So that'll be cool. So again, on behalf of me as the Unemployed Alcoholic, on behalf of the Laugh Fest Recovery Showcase and Gilda's Club, thank you all for
that's awesome.
for underwriting that.
So how do you get tickets?
Well, partially because of the underwriting. This is a free show. So
Whoa,
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news.
I want the logo on the bottom. Breaking news.
Free non-family adult event. March 11 at 6:30.
Clear comedy.
Monroe Community Church.
Transparent comedy.
Yeah.
Transparent comedy.
I love the idea of, because when you talk about recovery, it's such a serious thing. Like people automatically be like, oh, they're in rehab.
Yeah.
Like the tone, your voice gets softer, or not just rehab, but like recovery. Just that whole
Well, you get
conversation surrounding it. So then to like come up and just laugh about it is big, because the biggest thing I've heard from recovery is that they don't want a constant reminder of like, oh, they're not drinking, or oh, they can't be surrounded by this area. I can't say that because it'll trigger them. I mean, all these things. So then they just go and make light of those things, because in the end, like, those things are a part of you, but they don't, like you said, define you. And it is all, you know, think back to like anything in life. Like it becomes, it's not always serious. And to
What
be,
we talked about with Degage too is making your own choices and decisions. Being your own person. So it's, I mean, in recovery, that's important.
Yeah.
yeah.
When it gives
And
us-
recovery is very serious.
Yeah.
And, but it's not universally depressing.
You get what
Yeah.
It's a way to talk about it in a way that's not,
Yeah. There is a
It's not so
time.
heavy, I
There is a
guess.
time in somebody's recovery
Yeah.
journey that they have to have tears,
Yeah.
and they have to sit down with a sponsor and accountability partners and go through some very, very painful stuff. But that period of time does not last forever.
no.
Right.
There is joy, there's peace, and in fact, there's some things that you get out of going through that journey that everybody should have.
Yeah.
There's a
No, I
sense
totally
of
agree.
serenity.
Yeah.
There's just some wonderful things that, again, in a lot of ways, I feel blessed to have suffered through some addictions and some struggles because it's kind of shaped me into who I
Yeah,
am.
it makes you take a good hard look.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't slow down enough to really see that, or take the time, or
When really every obstacle you face in life is going to shape you in one way or the other. And I feel like recovery, like exactly what you said, is like, it's like it almost gives off this persona that this
Something's
individual
wrong with them.
is
You know,
wrong,
like,
but
yeah.
let alone like fragile.
Yeah.
And they're not fragile. Like you were not fragile. You might have had fragile moments, but a friend
We all
recently,
do.
yeah, a friend
Yeah.
recently described her own self as, I'm not fragile like a flower. I'm fragile like a bomb.
yeah.
And I feel like in that, like you
really
know,
like
like
that.
there's like a
Yeah.
like an inside that's like ready to explode. Like a flower gives like, oh, it's gonna wilt and die. Like that's
Yeah.
not what recovery is
Yeah.
at all. Like
No.
you're fragile like a bomb. Like here, I'm gonna explode into something amazing or awesome, or I'm gonna explode and implode myself. But either way, there's this fierceness inside of me. So you're not necessarily fragile. You're so strong. And I think that's where we can really, and that's where laughter comes in to help switch that. Like, you know,
To heal.
yeah.
To heal
Yeah.
through those tough times.
Yeah, and the drive that people have when they experience true life change it's incredible.
It is.
And
it
those
is moving,
Yes.
it's all get out. It's infectious almost.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So you had when we were kind of talking through this, you had asked a question that I thought was really cool. Like, what does somebody do if there's somebody in their life that is dealing with alcohol problems? And unfortunately, there's not a real clear answer to say, oh, if you do this, their life will change and everything will be better.
Yeah.
Just because that's not how it works. That's not how I've ever seen it work anyway. We can communicate ways that they're hurting us, or we can draw healthy boundaries, but we can't make somebody change.
Right.
And again, the thing that made a difference with me, was one, patience, but also just support. When I was to the point where I'm ready and willing to make efforts and changes, people supporting me was incredibly important. In fact, I love a good acronym or an acrostic where the letters stand for something. It helps me remember stuff. But I developed one for how to support people.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah, it's called real support. And as I'm stepping into a situation where I feel like I need to support somebody, I bring this to mind, or I think about this. And the R stands for relating to their problems instead of judging them.
Yeah, that's huge.
If I can think of, okay, this is what they're going through, when have I been in a position similar to that, then that bonds us together, and I'm much more able to support them. E is I like to encourage people's victories rather than condemning them for their failures. There is no critic that is worse than ourselves. As far as feelings of condemnation and shame, we've got that in spades.
Oh yeah.
The A stands for ask. As I'm talking with people and I feel led to support them, I try to ask them questions instead of telling them what to do. It's really, really easy for me to sit down and say, well, you need to do this.
Right?
Read this book and you'll be fine.
I feel like that is so common with anything,
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I find myself like with my little sister doing the same thing. Like, what?
You need to do this.
No, it's not. I mean, if I had all the people told me what to do when I was young too. I still made the mistake. You got to ask them to help them get
them
to
where
where they
they're
are
at.
on their own. Yeah, because
Exactly.
you just can't.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but one of those old sales gurus said that the best way to sell a salesperson is make them think it was their idea.
Right.
I love it. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, maybe it was
It's
Dale
true. I
Carnegie.
got a lot of
or something.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, for me, if somebody steps in and says, "Do this," my back's gonna arch up, and I'm not gonna do it.
Yep.
But if I think, "Oh, I need to do this," then I'm gonna respond a lot.
If you can
better.
come there
So-
on your own.
Exactly.
And
So
everything's about being on your own too.
So by asking questions, what would life look like if this were the case?
Right.
What's stopping this? What's preventing this? What can we do? How can I help? But asking questions, that's essential. And then the final one, that L, is let go. In recovery, a big part of recovery is the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
Or God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The fact is,
Yeah, that's huge in life.
yeah. And other people's actions, other people's decisions, other people's beliefs, they fall squarely into the bucket of things that we cannot control.
Right.
So we need to let go. And for those of us who are of faith, we get a bonus L. We can let God. We can pray for people.
Give it up.
Yep, we can have a peace, we can have a joy that surpasses all understanding. There's some benefits
Yeah.
to that. So we get that bonus L, and that's real support.
Real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is probably exactly what you expected to have a comedian come on and chat.
I just liked when you were like,
Well, that's-
real support. I just imagined
Yeah,
you like,
yeah.
I imagined you like a superhero and like
That's-
stuff shooting out. Like,
We have that in common because most of the mornings I look in the mirror and picture myself as a superhero.
I just imagine you like seeing the cape wave.
You have a fan going.
Yeah.
So we are running out of time, unfortunately.
Yes,
so
yep.
I mean, we could sit here and chat for hours.
Oh,
I'm sure. Just
there's so
jokes upon
much.
jokes,
Yeah.
right? Is there anything that you want to leave the audience or us with? Any nuggets, pearls of wisdom, whatever you funny guy call it? Anything else that we should try to call it?
I guess if I could, speak to your watchers or your audience or listeners, or speak to you for a minute, I would say that there may be things that are paralyzing you. You may have shame about things in the past. You may have fear about things in the future, or you may be a little bit proud about things that you're not ready to give up right now. The future's good. The future's better with you in it. And you've got a great deal to contribute to the people around you. Thanks for being you. Have a great day and enjoy your journey.
What he said.
Boom.